Good evening, Reston. Welcome to Reston Impact. As usual, I'm your host, John Lovis, but tonight we've got a very special guest, a next-door neighbor, as it were. She is Jennifer Boysko. She is the delegate from the 86th Delegate District of Virginia to the General Assembly. The 86th District, in case you didn't know this, and you certainly should know this, happens to be basically Herndon. Is it?
Herndon, Oak Hill, parts of Chantilly, Sterling Park, and one precinct in Reston, actually.
Which precinct in Reston?
Stewart. It's right off of Fairfax County Parkway.
Okay, it's over toward Trader Joe's.
Yes.
That area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you, John.
I've known Jennifer a long time. I've both been activists in the Democratic Party, and Jennifer worked to do a lot of good things for the town of Herndon, before she ran for the legislature. She was elected last year, 2015, handily beating a Republican and an independent, I believe, for the delegate seat that was vacated when Tom Russ, the longtime delegate, former mayor, retired. She ran her first race in 2013 against the same Tom Russ and lost by a whisker, what was it, 55 votes out of 21,000?
It was, and then we had a recount, and it ended up, the final number was 32 votes.
32 votes out of 21 or 22,000 votes cast.
It was a squeaker.
It was real close. And after that, for the next election, Tom decided to step down. She was wearing him out, I think, is what happened. Anyway, delighted to see you.
So nice to be here.
Delighted that you obviously won. We've already talked about that. But what I really wanted to talk to you about today, okay, now you've got this, you climbed this hill, you pushed the rock up to the top, and now you've got yourself stuck down in Richmond with all those people. And I'm glad to see you're smiling, I'm glad to see you're still standing upright and things like that. But basically, what I really wanted to talk to you about is the first year, how it went and how you feel about it. But first of all, what were the keys, what do you think the keys were to you winning the second time around against Tom Rust?
Sure. Well, I wasn't running against Tom the second time.
Just Tom had retired because you scared him off.
Sure. So it was an open seat.
Open seat.
And hadn't been open, he had held the seat for 14 years. I'd been active in the community not only as a grassroots activist and volunteer. I'd served on my church's diocesan council at St. Timothy's. I'd been active in the PTA for years, but I also worked for Supervisor John Faust of Drainsville as his face in my community. And so I had been working to help solve problems for a number of years in the community, and had built up, I believe, a good reputation for being someone who listens and brings people together to solve problems.
Okay.
And
I think that's true. You were also very helpful in the area of relations with the immigrant community.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to find a way to put it, the Day Labor Center.
Sure, when we had the Day Labor site, yes.
In Herndon.
I was an advocate there. I volunteered. We organized a group called HEART. Herndon Embraces All with Respect and Tolerance. And our mission was to testify before the town, to talk about the positive aspects of having the Day Labor Center, speak to the press, and to volunteer in general.
Yeah, I know.
It was a great experience.
I think you were really well known. It wasn't like when you ran for the delegate seat, it wasn't like you were an unknown in the community. That's quite clear. And then I remember, now that you mentioned working for John Faust, the supervisor from that part of Fairfax County, but you had something else darker in your record that I found online when I looked at before we had this get together.
What was that?
You worked on Capitol Hill for
I did.
A guy named Shelby?
This was in the late 80s, 1989. I had been an intern for him when I was in college.
Right?
He's from Alabama, which is where my mom and stepfather live, and I'd gone to high school in Montgomery.
You were born in?
I was born in Arkansas, and I lived there till I was 15 in Hot Springs. But then my mother and I moved to Alabama when I was going into high school, and that's where she still lives now, and I consider that my home away from home at this point. So I got a job with Senator Richard Shelby. He was a Democrat at the time. It was my very first job out of college.
He was a Democrat
He was a Democrat at the time, yes.
And then he converted it.
Several years later, during the big shift in power with Newt Gingrich.
Okay, you didn't drive him out of the party.
No, I was out of his office by then.
Okay, all right. So that you did have some experience. You've had considerable experience, community experience, but also some
Yeah.
political office experience.
I also worked for a government affairs firm, and I covered the Hill. So I went
Now,
to
you can use the real name for the firm. You can call it what it is. What do government?
It was a lobbying firm.
Thank you.
It was a lobbying firm. Yeah.
You're the one of what, 100,000 people in the
Yeah.
Washington metro area that are in.
But it was
lobbying.
really interesting because I really learned how public policy takes shape, and also. It was during NAFTA, and my
Okay.
bosses worked for Southwestern Bell, so I covered all of the hearings, and I was told, this is going to make
okay.
it better for everybody. It's really going to change lives, and it's going to bring everybody's, standard of living up. Now, what is it? More than 20 years later, 25 years later, I think, or more.
You're right.
I see a different perspective. So it helped me learn how to be a little bit skeptical of what people tell you.
Well, isn't one of the great problems with those, and I think it's maybe less true of NAFTA than it is the later vintage ones, such as the TPP.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't part of the problem that the way they're negotiated and then the secrecy? It's like it's not a public process. And it's like the public labor, for example, is not involved, but all those corporate interests tend to be involved. And it's kept like a deep, dark secret. A TPP, I don't think anybody's seen it yet, have they?
I haven't been following the latest.
But I don't think.
But I know that at one
like it's
point.
not a public document. You say, what the hell is that about?
I know.
That doesn't usually advertise you've got something you're proud of, right?
Well, you know what they say about politics. It's like making sausage. You don't necessarily want to see what all goes into it.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at there. I'm not going to.
Trouble is, what comes out the other side of this.
I know. Sometimes you don't
a
like.
Massive impact on
Yeah.
our people.
I know.
And NAFTA has not necessarily been very good for working people. It's had some transformative effects in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these other treaties have had third world effects that are pretty good. They brought up people from basically zero incomes to, $1 a day kind of thing, which made a big impact there, at the cost of tremendous cost to our middle class, and we can't seem to figure out how to balance those.
I know.
I digress.
Well, at the state level, I'm not making
You're not
those
in international
decisions.
trade.
Right.
And
We're
you don't do
talking.
immigration either, really,
Correct.
which is too bad because those are gutsy issues. But as President Obama pointed out during the convention this week, it's state and local governments that have a lot of impact in some of these areas. Last thing on your election, what was the key to your winning, do you think?
I went door to door every single day.
Just old-fashioned retail politics.
Old-fashioned listening to people, making sure that they knew that I cared about what was important to them. So I wasn't necessarily trying to sell myself as much as I was trying to connect person by person by person. And I still stand by that. That's what I'm about. And I think people saw that.
Having done that on a much smaller scale for the Homeowners Association,
Mm-hmm.
What struck me is that people were thought well of you for asking the question. Not that they were convinced that, in my case, that I
Right.
was the brightest thing since I read.
Right.
But just the idea that somebody came to their door and said, what do you think ought to be done?
Exactly.
What do you think? And they seem to appreciate that idea. And that maybe is that the biggest thing that happens when you go door to door, is that people say, oh, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, the real quality conversations. I learned so much about, and it's not that I have all the answers or that I think that I'm the smartest person in the world, but I'm willing to take the time to help, go through that process and to make sure that everybody has a place and a voice and a seat at the
and
table.
the good thing, I guess, about living in a place like Herndon, it's the population of Herndon is 30,000?
No, it's about 23. But I represent about 80,000 people. So.
Oh, there's a lot. Okay, the
Yeah.
town limits. It's well beyond the
It's
town
well
limits.
outside of the town is about a third of the district.
Okay.
So.
Okay. But it's small enough that you can do a lot of retail.
I talk to all of it. Yeah. And I'm still hearing from people. You came to my house. And this is an issue for me. What do you think about this? What can you do about that? The number of people.
So it pays benefits beyond the first hit. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my job.
How much did your campaign cost you?
Well,
You knew I was going to ask that question.
Yes, as you should. One thing that's crazy is that in Virginia there are no limits to political donations. There's no cap whatsoever.
It's not crazy. It's criminal. but go ahead.
I have a big problem with it. My opponent raised over $1 million with less than 400 donors.
$1 million for a delegate campaign?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And
I always thought these were the sort of $100,000 ballpark. But
no, he over $1 million,
God.
heavily by political, members of the Republican Party. I had over 3,400 individual donors, and I raised about 600,000.
For
I
one
know.
election
It's
cycle?
shocking, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it blows my mind.
It is mind blowing.
Because back when I looked at this more intensively, say 6, 8, 10 years back, I was looking at Ken Plum's situation, and I was seeing numbers like 150.
I know.
200,000. So this is mind blowing.
And you realize that we are compensated at about $17,000 a year. So,
Well, that's about
the
a third,
states-
half or a third of what you make, because you get $185, $200 a day for per diem, and you spend for all the time you spend in Richmond, which you should, obviously. I mean,
Right.
but you're not going to become wealthy being a delegate. That's
No.
for certain. But see, that bothers me that you have that those two things enter into the same sentence. Even the notion that, I raise a lot of money, but I only get paid this. Well, there shouldn't be any connection.
well, I guess my point was, and I'm sorry I didn't make it clear, is the stakes are so high that people put so much money into those races. And it's not about the money. It's about having a seat at the table. I guess it's so valuable to people on both sides of the aisle to be able, because our lives are really
Right.
changed at the state level so much. There's a lot at stake.
What businesses gave money?
Businesses, okay, I'm just trying to...
I'll give you a couple examples.
Sure. The beer wholesalers, the wine wholesalers donated to me. I mainly had labor as big
The Democrats
donors,
typically do, yep.
and individuals primarily. I did not have an enormous amount of PAC contributions from businesses. They typically don't give in open races. And as I said, I had over 3,400.
Okay, but that's an important point.
It is.
They have a strong noted tendency to give to incumbents.
Yes.
And to be a little leery of open seats.
Right.
They'd rather bet on sure thing.
Correct.
Which, of course, is saying something also, that they think they are betting, and they think they're going to get something for doing it. Businesses don't give money for good governance.
Well, I make it very clear that, I vote the way I think is the best for the whole community. And
By the way, she's quite a dangerous kind of progressive kind of person. They know what I mean. They know they can consider the source, right?
Well, I consider myself a true progressive, and my interests are in families and children, helping average kinds of people.
And I know that. My interest in the direction of the conversation is more towards, gee, I hope you'll do some things down there to clean up the system, because I think it's a sewer as a system.
Well, it's a difficult
And
place.
It needs new people like you to do that. You're off to Richmond. You're a shiny, new, pretty liberal kind of person, in the heart of the old Confederacy.
Yep.
What were your first impressions down there?
Well, John, I don't know if you remember from the 1960s the show That Girl with Marlo Thomas.
Oh my God, yes,
Yeah.
That's how old I am. Yes, I remember it quite well. I was well along in my adulthood, yes.
Yeah, so my hotel where I stayed was about 3 blocks away from the Capitol and the General Assembly building. The first day I was marching on down, feeling so empowered and excited about being there, and then got into the session, and the session is broken up into the morning hour where any member can talk about whatever they want, and then you do the actual body of work where you're voting and debating. And so the very first day...
This is a 45 or 60-day session?
This was a 60-day session.
Okay.
Yeah, this was the long one. So we get in there the very first day, and this gentleman, and I did know my colleagues from around the state, this gentleman got up and he starts talking about Black Lives Matter, but not the Black Lives Matter where the men are killing the cops. The Black Lives Matter with the abolitionists. And unfortunately, he didn't pronounce abolitionists correctly.
Abolition.
But he starts moving towards slavery, and then he moves it into abortion. And
Oh my God.
the grand finale was and you're walking with Satan if you support Planned Parenthood. The interesting thing was about half of the Republicans got up and ran out of the room to hide in the
cloakroom or wherever it is. Yeah.
And then the other half of them got up and gave him a standing ovation.
So this was one of your earlier experiences.
It was the very first morning. It was the very first thing that happened.
Okay, that's exactly what I was looking for.
You
what
know,
happened there?
You think, wow, this is really going to be something.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that I found common ground with that gentleman, and he ended up, I had a bill later on. It was to put a new member on the Forensic Science Board. And originally, the Forensic Science Board is the one who do the rape kits and
rape kits.
Yeah.
And that kind of, okay.
So
okay.
I was trying to put a new member on because they had an opening on it. So, but when I went to present it to the courts committee, they completely killed the bill. They tabled it, which means it's dead. I did not.
The forensic committee is those who make sure that people who are raped get a...
Well, it's all of kind of legal science. So any sort of testing or lab work that has to be done in surrounding a crime, this is the group, the body that oversees that process. And my effort had been to put a victim's rights advocate on, a victim advocate on that board.
Good.
The courts committee did not agree with me. They killed my bill. Instead of accepting defeat on that, I went back to the head of the courts committee and said, what do we need to do to fix this? How can we find a different person that is going to be palatable to you all? And I ended up going back to the man who gave that fiery speech.
Yeah.
He had another idea to put somebody on from the Consolidated Labs. I said, okay, that makes sense too. And then he became my chief co-sponsor.
So you each got one.
So we worked together, and we got the bill taken back up. It got passed out unanimously and was passed into law. So you will never imagine who your partner might be.
Now, just the setting for people, I don't know if folks remember out there, but the House of Delegates has 100 seats, 100 members.
Yes.
Democrats, they go after all of them. Well, they don't go after them. They go about 55. They run about 55 people for the 100 seats, the Democrats do. But I'm disgusted by that. But what are the numbers? You're looking at how many Republicans, how many Democrats in that 100? It's 2 to 1?
66 Republicans, 34 Democrats. This year, for the first time in several, we picked up 2 seats and were able to...
you were one of them.
I was one of the 2. We were able to sustain all of the governor's vetoes. And
oh, that's big. I didn't
it's
realize
significant. If that had not happened,
big.
we would have had Planned Parenthood defunded. We would have had some heinous gun laws, additional gun...
a gun for every child, yeah.
Basically, yeah. I mean, some really significant things.
I didn't realize that's a very important. That's
the governor
a very important
and
point.
we were able to sustain. And it was kind of funny because the Republicans tend to vote in block. I mean, they're pretty much bound together. And when we were voting in block, which we were, they were like, "Wait a second, you all are voting all in block," and we were like, "Yes, we are." Boom, another one, boom, and they sat there a little bit stunned, like for the first time realizing, oh.
Two can play that game.
This is what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Let me ask you: did you have any sort of mentor, either
I
officially
did.
or unofficially?
Yes, freshman members get a mentor, and I was fortunate to get Eileen Filler-Korn.
Oh my goodness! Okay, somebody you knew.
Yeah, and now just have so much respect for her.
From McLean, right?
No, she is from the Springfield, Burke area.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and wonderful woman, has done a lot on standing up against domestic violence, for instance,
Yeah.
gun safety issues.
But I assume that was a real help.
It was an enormous help. I mean,
Good.
she's somebody that I could, just say, Eileen, what do we do? What is this? Please explain that to me.
We're looking at this bill tomorrow. What kind of
Yeah.
stuff am I likely to run into?
Right.
Terrific.
Because we had, 3,000 bills introduced. That's pretty overwhelming in 60
Another
days.
subject. I think
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. It's probably unrealistic is a better word. You do two other questions I want to get to, sort of the format.
Sure.
A lot of the work is done in committees.
All of the work is done
Done
in
in committee.
primarily.
What
Subcommittee.
What committees did you get in the final?
I
mess?
served on privileges and elections and counties, cities, and towns.
Okay. Okay, were those the kinds of things you were hoping to serve on?
Well, I mean, I think they were good committees. I have a breadth of local government work, so
Fits your
that was a good
background.
fit.
Yeah.
It was an excellent fit. And
So a lot of people come in thinking they're going to run appropriations or.
I'm number 100 in seniority. There are 100
Out of 100.
members.
Oh.
I am the lowest person on the totem pole at this point. So I was very
But
realistic
next year, you
about.
might be up one or two.
I will, because we are going to have some people moving on. So I'll get a new license plate probably. I also had to buy pizza for everybody in in the house, because that's another one of the perks you get. But I'm
That's what newbies get.
yeah, but privilege is an election. That's where we voted on the constitutional amendments, the stuff dealing with labor, voting rights. It's a pretty interesting committee, but again,
local government, I would argue, is very
Yeah.
important to the mechanics of our democracy,
Yeah.
and that's where it starts, and that's where we're doing a lot of things not so well, and
Right.
that's not an unimportant committee.
Yeah, well, let me tell you because the speaker has full authority on who goes on what committees and on what bills go in
And
which.
the speaker is elected by the majority, so he's a Republican.
Correct.
Right.
Right. He's served for a long time. He's certainly a respectable person, but he does know what power he holds. We had a bill, and this just seems so silly to me. A city down in the Hampton Roads area wanted to be able to address blight issues, and so they asked. We have given them authority to cut grass if it gets over 12 inches without having to ask.
In Virginia, if you're in local government, if you want to go to the bathroom, you have to go
ask
to
the General Assembly.
For permission, basically.
So they can cut the
Called the
grass.
Dillon Rule, yeah.
Yes, so they can cut the grass. They
can cut the grass. Oh, this
they
is
were
good.
they were petitioning to be able to trim shrubs and nuisance trees, and guess what?
No.
We could not get enough votes to get it out of subcommittee.
This is your Virginia legislature, folks.
I'm still just shocked by that.
I thought I knew about all that. That
No.
one shocks me. Cynic than I am, you blew me away with that.
Shrubs, come on.
What bills did you put in, and what kind of success do you had? Obviously, you're in your first year.
Mm-hmm.
It probably took you a while to figure out the mechanics of how one would prepare a bill, what was required, et cetera. So I'm not expecting that you submitted 500 bills, but
Yeah.
tell us a couple of things that you did and kind of the experience. Time is going to run short on us, but
Sure.
I'm really interested.
Sure. Well, one bill that I proposed that actually a couple of things happened was other people ask you to carry legislation because you know as a freshman you don't necessarily have all the ideas in the world and everything fleshed out, as you were saying.
So try to figure out how the place works.
Sure. So I carried a bill for the governor that would have expanded who could have a driver's license in Virginia, and. And my idea, the idea that I was carrying was one that would have allowed people who have legal presence here, who maybe are here because of their refugee status, for instance.
Right.
It would have affected about 6,000 people in Virginia to allow them to get to work back and forth, to pay for the driver's license, to have insurance and driver's education.
And the assumption being that these are undocumented.
These are not undocumented. There was another bill that was carried by a Republican, Rob Bloxham, that would have opened it to everybody.
So what did they require legally to be able to get a driver's license?
Well, in Virginia, everybody who is here legally is not authorized to have a driver's license. So if you're here as if you're here as a refugee from another country because you are suffering political persecution or in harm of death under other statutes,
you're not authorized to have a driver's license.
Not, because you're not. It's not in the code. So, my bill would have expanded it so that
folks who
were here legally, have legal presence, would be able to have a driver's license.
Amazing, and it didn't succeed.
It didn't, but it did go into a study with the other versions of the bill. So I'm not the point person on that, but
it might come back and survive.
It's going to come back. I very much want to see that succeed next year. I also supported.
Tell me about the bill on Herndon. There's something.
Sure. Yeah, the town asked me to carry.
It said
Town
she got
charter
a
bill.
piece of a town charter approved or something. And I said,
Sure.
wow, I thought they had a town charter a million years ago.
Oh, it's just changing the town charter very, very slightly. This was a really sexy bill. 2.5 acres of land that had been in Loudoun County was deemed by the courts that it was actually in Herndon's
Good.
jurisdiction. So
Not where the old police station is, no.
yeah, over
Oh,
by
we
the
got
old
it. I know
police
where that is.
station.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just right there off of Rock Hill Road.
Right.
And then also in the town charter, it has always held that in the event of an emergency, the citizen mayor takes charge of the police force. And because we have a professional chief of police in Herndon, the mayor thought it would be best to change the town charter. So at her request,
Really?
I carried a bill. Senator Jennifer Wexton carried the same legislation on the Senate side, and they were passed. So, yeah.
Okay.
But
So that was your.
well, that was one of my bills. The other one
No, but it's also because
Yeah.
that's good for your constituency.
Yeah.
You got something done for Herndon.
for Herndon.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. So.
Mention one more.
I carried a bill that I knew had no chance to win, which was to overturn the ban on abortion coverage in insurances that are in the federal
Right.
exchange. And
Bet that went nowhere.
it went nowhere. And it was really sad because we had people who were there testifying to give their personal stories that were heart-wrenching, some talking about fetal anomalies and, severe challenges that people faced. And there was one woman on the committee that was considering it. And many of the members had their heads down. They were doing on their computer. They were talking to each other. And then when they asked, shall the bill be, they tabled it immediately. But
But you're going to go back next year.
I'm going to go back
and
again.
You're going to be ready.
Yeah.
You got a research service that enables you to
Yeah,
find
we have
out information
attorneys. Yeah.
so that you can get the information you need to
Correct.
prepare a bill so you're not just
Yes.
on your own.
And I'm working this summer with a variety of stakeholders to flesh out details for legislation for next year.
So you're looking forward to going back. I have already gotten a fundraising letter from you.
I know.
So you're raising money.
I
Scandalous, you've got to fix the fundraising business. You've got to fix it.
I'm right there with you. I would like to fix the fundraising, but I have to work within the framework that I have.
Yeah,
So
that's true. I was going to ask you about. We've already talked about that, really. Let me just, before we forget it, show you let's see some of the fun part of what you do.
yeah.
We got, before I came on this program with you, I got a hold of a couple pictures that you sent me, as a matter of
Yes.
fact. Let's see this young lady with a couple of politicians that she's run into recently. Who's this person you're with?
That would be our Democratic nominee for president, Hillary Clinton. And I'm an Arkansas native, so
Oh my God, there's a connection
this really,
there.
it's thrilling to me, yes.
And do you have a picture with someone, do we have a picture with someone else?
We do.
And who is this fellow?
That would be our vice presidential Democratic nominee, Senator Tim Kaine. And again, I couldn't be more pleased that he is our nominee. I think he's just the perfect person for the race. So.
Well, he is our Democratic senator,
He
as I say.
He's a champion on so many things.
Anyway, that's some of the bennies of being in legislature. You get to have your picture taken with cool people like that.
It is. The real great thing is, though, getting to be in the nitty-gritty with the community and helping solve problems. That's what I really love more than anything.
Well, you're very good at it, and I'm just delighted to see you there.
Thank you.
I think you're going to be a tremendous success. Don't live your whole life there. Come back and spend some time with you, quality time with your family, and do some other things, because you're still so young. You've got a lot of years to give to some other things too. Don't go down there and get carried out with your boots on, kind of thing. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, John. It was really a pleasure.
And
to be here.
I wish you every bit of success down there. And let's get some more Democrats in the place so
Yes.
we can move some things forward.
Thank you.
I want to thank Jennifer for coming over. Jennifer Boysko, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of hope, the kind of energy, the kind of person we need in the legislature. We need more of her type. And one of her jobs should be to go out and identify some more youth with those kinds of views. Thanks to Comcast for helping us bring you this program, but thanks most of all to you, our viewers, for being kind enough to share some of your time with Jennifer and I this evening. It's been a real pleasure, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Reston Impact.